our next panelist, another one of my heroes, has been fighting in the trenches more years than anybody else on California education. Lance Izumi has written a book which looks to me, we've all got to get this book, takes complicated issues and makes them fairly easy to understand. And so I also appreciate the fact that he has, in the many things he's done on this issue, he's also been very helpful in a number of roles to the United States military. Anyway, thank you. Everybody should get this.
Anyway, I want to thank Karen Siegerman and AFA for inviting myself and all our panelists here, and thank you all for coming out here today on a Sunday morning. As Matt was saying, I've been in this, education reform movement for quite a long time. Previous to that, though, I started off life as a speechwriter. I was actually a speechwriter for Supervisor Mike Antonovich, who I believe you're going to be honoring a little later today. I was a speechwriter in the Reagan administration for U.S. Attorney General Ed Meese, and then I became chief speechwriter for Governor George Duke Nugent. So if you ever wondered where the Duke got all that charisma, it came from me. I always say that behind every great man, there's a little Japanese guy at a keyboard. So, yes, right. There's a role even for us. Anyway, I am right now the Koret Senior Fellow at the Pacific Research Institute, and I hope the PRI is your second favorite think tank, Matt. And I've written this book, The Corrupt Classroom, The Bias, Indoctrination, Violence, and Social Engineering Show Why America Needs School Choice. Now, as Lisa mentioned, I've written a lot on school choice, and one of the things I've used a lot over the years is data on school test scores, and to show that, hey, even in middle-class neighborhoods, the kids aren't doing so well. Now, that's important, right, how kids do in math and English, right, but that's not the only thing, right, that parents are interested in. In fact, that may actually be down the list a bit on the things they're interested in. So, for example, if your kid is getting indoctrinated in these progressive ideologies that, that Peter and others have mentioned, well, would you want your kid to be in that school? So, for example, I have an entire chapter in my book called The Politicized Classroom. And, Peter mentioned by any means necessary. When you look at the riots that went on in Berkeley, who was the leader of that riot? And who was the leader of that by any means necessary group that was starting those riots? Was it some radical mass person? Well, there were those people, but it was actually a public school teacher, a woman named Yvette Falarka, who is a middle school teacher at the Martin Luther King. What a ironic name, right? I mean, this person who advocated peaceful nonviolence to change, and here you have a person at Martin Luther King Public Middle School in Berkeley who is leading these Antifa by any means necessary riots, and causing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. And so even in places like Berkeley, you have parents who look at that example and say, this person should not be a public school teacher. And that's not only in Berkeley, that's across this nation. You look in North Carolina, I have an example of an English teacher in North Carolina who is comparing Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. And students are so shocked, they're doing secret audio recordings of the teacher's lectures. And one of the things the teacher says during one of those lectures is that there's no one who's safe from this guy except for white Christian males. And this is like an actual lecture that an English teacher is doing. In New Hampshire, you have a teacher who puts on a Donald Trump wig, turns on a profane anti-Trump rap song, and starts dancing to it inside the classroom, right? And one of the parents says, I couldn't believe this. And it's not like this person's a sociology teacher. This was a geometry teacher. You have a teacher in Colorado who puts the face of Donald Trump on a piñata and then encourages his students to take a whack at it. All right? This is happening all across the country. The teachers union in San Francisco issued a lesson plan the day after the Trump victory in which they told students that one of their assignments was that they should make posters about Donald Trump addressing Trump's supporters. basically asking them, why is it that you are seeking to dehumanize us? And so that was something that they issued to the 6,000 teachers. There's also, but it goes, the politicization of our classroom goes deeper than just the individual teachers or even the teachers union. It goes to our curriculum. California just issued a new history and social science curriculum just last year. And what's in it? It whitewashes communism, if you look at the area on the Cold War. What does it say about the Soviet Union? It says that the Soviet Union was a country that had a poor record on human rights. Now, if that isn't the understatement of the century, I don't know. What do you call a country that kills 20 million of its own people? Well, I guess it just has a poor record on human rights. But that's not even the worst of it. Now, what is the greatest man-forced famine in world history? It's a great leap forward in communist China under Mao Zedong. All right? 43 million people were killed under the Great Leap Forward. And yet, how does the California curriculum describe it? It describes it as a time of turmoil and disturbance. Really? Communist China killed 60 million people upwards. And yet, that is a country that simply promotes turmoil and disturbances, It's no wonder then that when you look at polls of millennials, that this has an impact. This type of teaching really sinks into kids. And more kids, according to a recent poll, think that more people died under the administration of George W. Bush than died under Joseph Stalin. And those are the kids who are in the Antifa movement. Those are the kids who are going to be voting. Those are the kids who are going to be running this country at some point. And it's more than just that teacher in the classroom. Look at other reasons for school choice. Safety. In the United States, there are 750,000 violent crimes committed on school campuses, and according to the latest federal statistics. 750,000 violent crimes. And what was the response of the Obama administration? It was to say that we should stop suspending kids. And what is the impact of that on parents? Well, I point out, for example, to the case of Lanny Turpin, a 9-year-old in Alabama, who gets beat up to the point that she has a concussion and severe facial injuries. The parent comes to the nurse's office. The nurse tells the parent that Lanny accidentally fell down. Luckily, Lanny, despite having a concussion, pipes up and says, "But Mama, I told them that this other girl jumped me." So the mother then goes to the principal, and the principal guarantees that that student, the perpetrator, would be suspended. Never was. So, of course, what happens? Lanny's mom pulls her out of the school. But, of course, she has no school choice implement like an education savings account or voucher or whatever, so she has to pay for it on her own, right? So there are one last statistic I'll give you is that it's not just student-on-student crime. It's things such as teacher-on-student crime. In the latest statistic, there was nearly 800 sex crimes committed by teachers and other school personnel against students. That's around 15 per week. Like there are incidents, for example, up in Oregon, where a teacher up there sent 1,800 sexually explicit texts to a student. All right? And that, again, is not an isolated incident. There's religious bias, too. I have chapters on religious bias, sexualization of the classroom, fiscal mismanagement of the classroom, all of which do not have anything to do with test scores. They eventually may have something to do with them, but not directly. And these are really important reasons why parents want to have their kids in a different school. Let me just give you an example on sexualization of the classroom. In even liberal Bay Area, middle schoolers were given a curriculum that were asking them to solve the sexual problems of college-age kids. And so, like the parents, even in this progressive area, were saying, this is age inappropriate. Why are you asking my, 13 or 14-year-old to be able to solve the problems of a college sophomore, or junior, or senior? In religious bias, the San Diego Unified School District has partnered with the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. You all know CARE. I don't need to tell you about CARE, right? They've partnered with them on an Islamophobia program. They're the only ethnic group which receives dedicated money for any kind of bullying, anti-bullying activity. And parents are rightfully upset throughout the district. Asian American parents, for example, have joined with other groups within the district to sue the district because why are you simply not only partnering with a hugely controversial organization like CARE, but also why are you using scarce district resources to only help a single group, right? Bullying is a problem across schools, which I talk about in my school safety section. It's a problem district, school, statewide, and nationwide. Why only one group? And so that's why those parents are suing. So the point of all of that is that there are lots of non-academic reasons why parents want choices, and therefore we need to look at things like what Larry said, what Lisa said, and what Peter's implied through his remarks, that we need to give parents choices in the schools, because until we get parents to have that opportunity to leave, the schools are going to continue to doing what I've just talked about. Thank you very much.